While scrolling through social media or websites, you might have found some cases about strange phone calls that are impossible. Police officers responding to 911 requests only to end up confused as to who exactly could have made the call. There was nobody there to begin with. Well, nobody alive, that is. But we found some of these cases too, and thanks to your suggestions, we started looking into them. In fact, some of these seemed so convincing that we had to stop and reassess for a minute. What could cause these things? And is there any validity to these cases? In this episode, we explore some haunting calls from people who had passed away. Are you ready? My name is Edwin, and here is a dark memory. It was a busy day at the telephone marketing office, and Mary B., who shared her tale on a website we'll link to, was talking to a potential customer about a phone service. Now, Mary was a skeptic when it came to ghosts and anything supernatural, but this experience seemed to have changed her mind. It was Thursday, April 26th, and the list in front of her included a number to Pennsylvania. Now, normally salespeople have a list to go through and mention their services to those who pick up the phone. Mary's call started as normal. A woman answered, identifying herself as Mrs. B, and the saleswoman went about mentioning a few things about the services when she realized that this might be a potential sale. The woman on the other line kept asking questions and seemed very interested in the services. When it was time to make a decision, the woman stopped, though. She then said that Mary should speak with her husband, because she had tried to get him to switch, but never would. In her own words, he was married to AT&T and refused to make any changes. The woman also said that ever since he retired, he would go fishing often, and it was difficult to get in touch with him. However, she did tell her that the best time to reach him would be early in the morning before he would leave. Mrs. B was rooting for the change because her bill was getting too expensive, because they made a lot of distance phone calls to North Carolina. The new plan would be perfect. Instead of insisting, Mary decided that it would be better to simply give a call the next morning. With that, she ended the call and went about her day. When she called the same number back, Mrs. B's husband answered, and that's when she mentioned the conversation that she had had with his wife. That was impossible. He was distraught when he said the following: "Lady, I don't know who you were talking to, but my wife died and I am not in any mood to speak to anyone." He then hung up the phone. In 1997, in North Wales in the UK, a woman named Claire and 5 other people were staying in a cottage owned by her best friend's grandfather. They were on a visit for Easter weekend, and the place was isolated with a single route to the main road, so not exactly in the middle of nowhere. On Saturday morning, they all decided to go to the local market and then stopped for lunch at a pub. While they were eating, other friends came and joined them, and casually mentioned that they were glad that they were still there. The curious group asked how they knew that they were there, and the newcomers said that they called the cottage, and the lady who answered the phone told them. However, there was no one else there. No cleaner, no nearby neighbors, and no one who could have gotten in to answer the phone to tell them. For the rest of their time there, Claire slept with the lights on, and she has never returned. Now, some people might be listening to this and might be coming up with explanations as to what could have happened. Perhaps a telemarketing call could have happened immediately after the woman's death, or it might have been a prank from the guy to scare off marketers. But there are also other theories, scientific ones, that can help explain some of these occurrences if you're not into the whole scaring yourself with stories type of thing. One of them is pareidolia, which uses the explanation that the brain is very good at bottom-up processing, which means that it takes in all of the senses that you're experiencing and then it tries to make it real, or make it make sense for you. This means that sometimes it finds meaning in things that don't have it, like when you see faces in inanimate objects like in the moon or shapes in the clouds. But it also does top-down processing, which results in us making up things, like when you overwhelm yourself with too many things and senses, so your brain just kind of skips taking in some of them, and it makes the rest up. You know how in ghost shows you sometimes hear static in the radio and it doesn't make any sense? Then they put captions on it and suddenly you think, whoa, yeah, it did say get out. Well, it's kind of like that. But not all of these stories work in the same way, and not all of them are as scary. I mean, they don't have to be. Dean Koontz was in his office when suddenly his phone rang. He picked it up and then he heard a strange whisper on the other side. "Be careful," it whispered. He asked who it was, confused. But the faint female voice simply repeated, "Be careful," 3 more times. When he hung up, he realized that the voice on the other side sounded a lot like his dead mother. The thought lingered in his mind. 2 days later, he went to visit the facility where his father was staying, and the police was called when his own father approached him with intention to stab him. His father had recently purchased a fishing knife and had sharpened the blade. The police came rushing in as Dean was holding the knife and successfully being able to disarm his father. That's when they yelled at Dean, demanding that he drop the knife. Dean's instinct was to tell them that he wasn't the one they were after. Then he remembered the phone call. Be careful. He realized then that he would be shot if he didn't comply. So he did. And then he put his hands up. Paranormal investigators and parapsychologists also use electro voice phenomena to catch signs from spirits, with things like spirit boxes or sound recorders, believing that these types of signals are easier to manipulate with spirit energies, and therefore making it an easier way to communicate with another realm. So now we'll look at some other strange calls that will make you think twice about this ability. It was September 12, 2008, and Charles Peck was traveling from Salt Lake City, Utah, to Los Angeles, California, for a job interview. He was trying to get a job there because his fiancée was living in California. Full of hope and wishing for just a little luck, he sat on the Metrolink trains in California, approaching Chatsworth. But then, the train collided with another, causing its death and the death of 24 other people. Immediately after, 35 phone calls were made to his family members and his fiancée from his phone. When they answered it was completely silent. However, it was later discovered that he had died on impact. How the phone calls were made remains a mystery. And in fact, the phone was never even recovered. The great-grandmother of a family lived in England, while the mother and the rest of them had been living in the United States. The great-grandmother would call at exactly 8:04 every other Sunday. The phone would ring with an unknown caller identification because it was a long-distance phone call. Unfortunately, the great-grandmother died, and then one Sunday, while they were eating breakfast, the mother noticed that it was 8:02 and began to cry, because that's when they would begin expecting a phone call from the great-grandmother. At 8:03, she was silent, tears rolling down her face, attempting to face her new reality. At 8:04, the phone rang. The woman answered it, and it was static noise for several minutes. And then the caller hung up. Nothing that was being said could be identified, and it was just so much noise. But then at the very end, she heard, "Enjoy your trip to paradise," in a cheery female voice. Ever since, a few other things that cannot be explained have happened around there. Like at the funeral, the dad called and said that her book had been left at the top of the stairs. It was a children's book that she hadn't read for a while that had been sitting on her bookshelf. But this time it was lying open at the top of the stairs. It was a gift. A gift from her great-grandmother. When someone leaves us unexpectedly, everything changes. Their missing text messages, phone calls, and random jokes can show up from time to time, as if they were still with us. We can find ourselves laughing at those memories we once shared. Maybe they don't leave us. Maybe they go wait for us, and in the meantime, try to let us know that they are all right. That everything's all right. And that you will be okay, too.